Today on the Norse Benchwarmers podcast, we have a special guest joining us as we recap the NCAA Men's National Championship game between UConn and Purdue, along with John Calipari leaving Kentucky, heading to Arkansas, along with a preview of the NBA playoffs, and of course, we'll end the show with the Norse Benchwarmers 2-minute warning. Welcome back to the Norse Benchwarmers podcast. I'm your host, Colton Smith, here joined by co-host Ben Miller. And special guest, Alex Perez from The Raid. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you're here, bro.
How are you guys doing? How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. Great national championship game. Let me ask you this. How was your weekend?
Oh, finally got it asked to me. It was, well, like my rundown says, pain. Just pain. But you guys didn't have the best weekend either, you know?
Yeah, that was a little tough. It was a little tough, yeah.
Yeah, like Josh isn't here to have his UNC where just like nothing really happened. Like UK fans had a fun weekend.
Yeah.
So quickly.
But we'll go ahead and talk about that later. First, we are going to talk about my pain first, the national championship, where Purdue, or we'll start by recapping the Final Four just as in a whole.
All right.
So Purdue defeated North Carolina State 63-50. That was the first game of the weekend there on Saturday. DJ Horn was kind of just on the island most of that game, and Burns did his job, but he just didn't quite have what he had against Duke, and I think Edey did a good job of stopping him there, but Burns definitely did what he could. Edey was great, but the supporting cast looked well. Wish that would have stood throughout the weekend, but Edey had a quiet 20 points, 12 rebounds. Lance Jones had 14, hitting 4 threes. As a team, they were 10 for 25 from beyond the arc. What did you guys see from this game?
I mean, this was a really good matchup between NC State and Purdue, but I just feel like Zach Edey was the difference maker versus DJ Burns. He just played a much better game.
Yeah, Edey's just too big for Burns, honestly. There was no offense he was able to get going, really, and then he was in foul trouble, so that made it tough on him. I mean, there was a couple points where you saw Burns was able to get Edey off of spots, but even when he was doing that, the little baby hook was working to perfection, so there was really not much NC State could do.
Yeah, and it's sad. As much as I am happy that you're here, I'm kind of sad I haven't been able to gloat to Josh yet about Edey's 2 free throws that he had in the game, like a free throw merchant, I guess so. But the next game of the weekend was UConn defeating Alabama 86-72. Bama made things interesting, honestly more interesting than Purdue did in the second game. Their high-powered offense did prevent UConn from really pulling away much at any points, but obviously towards the end they pulled away up by 14. Mark Sears had a nice 23 points. I feel like everyone showed up for Alabama. UConn was just better. Freshman Stephon Castle led UConn with 21 points, and all starters on UConn had double digits.
Yeah, another great matchup, like you mentioned. I feel like UConn, this is the most challenging team they face, this Alabama squad. Yeah. As I mentioned before, in a couple of episodes, Alabama, they're the number one offensive team in the nation, and they kept it close, but UConn at the end, they pulled away late, and they were tough to beat.
Yeah, that's the one thing you're scared of in March is a team that can get red hot from three.
Yes.
And that's exactly what Alabama could do. And like you said, Mark Sears was keeping them in the game, so at least it kept it interesting, but they're just too much from UConn.
Yeah, I was hoping like Alabama would just score 33s and, play Purdue. I'd rather have Alabama, obviously, but
for sure.
That's what it would have taken, and it didn't happen. So, and then moving on to UConn defeating Purdue 75-60. Outside of Zach Edey, of course, this is simply what happened. Outside of Zach Edey, UConn's players were taller, faster, stronger, more versatile, and just across the board, they were better than Purdue's supporting cast. I don't think there's a single player on Purdue outside of Edey better than a UConn player. That's coming from, obviously Purdue's number one fan. Purdue's guards scored majority of their points off throughout the season off of Edey doubles and like kicking it out in the three. When that was taken away from them, there was nothing they could do, and that was the difference of this game.
I mean, my thoughts, it was a really good game as always. Like, these are two of the most consistent teams all year. They kept it close, Purdue and UConn, but later in the second half, UConn, they just pulled away, and I feel like their guards, they were the difference makers. And Purdue, This is something that was shocking me. Was they shot 7 threes, and coming from the number 1 shooting team in the nation, or number 2, excuse me, I just found that, I wouldn't say shocking, but I thought they would be in contention to hit some threes.
Only 2 threes in the first half, attempted threes in the first half, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you were saying, Edie was doing everything, but Klingon just allowed them not to have to double. And then when, like you said, when they're doing that, they don't have the open threes like they're used to. And UConn's guards are just kind of the best in the country, so it's hard to negate that, really. And then Edie's scoring drought, I looked it up. He scored at 5:57 in the first half, and then didn't score again until 13:42 in the second half, and then went on another 4-minute drought. And by that time, it was a 14-point lead. So Edie not having any help was a big concern in that game.
Yeah, it felt a lot like the Farley Dickinson game. Like I guess at least it wasn't against the 16 seed this time, but it was in the national championship. I was just happy to be there at the end of the day. Like seeing Matt Painter get over the hump and make it to the Final Four. That's honestly all I needed from this March Madness, and would love to see him win, but happy with what I got.
Seeing Braden Smith being the only teammate that was registered an assist in the game.
Really? I didn't know that stat.
And
That doesn't shock me.
registered a 3 in the game. That just speaks to how much Edie had to do it basically by himself.
Yeah, it was just Mount Edie all by himself there. But let's talk about this UConn run a little bit here. Incredible total margin of victory throughout this tournament alone, 140. 20. That's an average margin of victory of 23 per game. Dating back to their run last season, they have won 12 straight tournament games by 10 points or more. This team has lost its 2 best players to the NBA, lost another great player as well, and Isaiah Jackson.
I can't remember.
I know it's Jackson. He's on the Bucks. It's something Jackson, but anyways, lost 3 players to the NBA last season. Turned around and honestly looked better this season than they did last year, and just. Now they are tied third all time with UNC, Josh, for total championships. They are a blue blood.
I mean, I believe it. Like just looking at the stat here, UConn, they only trailed 6 minutes and 22 seconds.
Oh, God, you had to bring that up.
That's crazy.
They it just like that just shows how great their offense, how complete their offense is, and as well with their defense. I believe they
Works
were
in harmony.
Yeah, like their opposing average was, I think, around 50 points.
They were top 25 in both points scored and points allowed.
Okay, yeah. That's a wild stat.
Yeah, and UConn, like you were talking about, they lost a lot. They lost 5 of the top 8 scorers from last year when they went undefeated and outscored everybody by double digits, and this was the best point differential in tournament history, which is one of the wildest stats I've ever heard.
That is insane.
And I don't know if this happens every year. Maybe you all could speak to it because I don't pay attention to the all-tournament teams that much. But 4 of the 5 starters for UConn made the all-tournament team.
Exactly. I'm like, that's got to be overkill. But honestly, you look at their stats.
It's not.
Yes. Yeah. It's nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, Alex Caravan, they were like, well, you got it. Edie's here, so you can't be
here.
But the rest of you.
Edie was the only thing stopping them. And what's crazy is most people are rooting for UConn. I'm like, we're going up against the Avengers and y'all are rooting for them? Like, whatever. But anything more you guys want to talk about the championship game? I'll just throw in like a quick question. Do you guys think they can three-peat?
I mean,
it'd take a lot more research, I guess, to know that. But just off the bean.
I was thinking about that, but I guarantee they're going to have a lot of guys commit to this year's NBA draft. So I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
Would you have seen it last year?
Good point.
That's a good point, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Alex.
This is the hardest tournament in sports, so I don't see a three-peat happening, but I also wouldn't put it past them because they did the same thing this year. So
yeah, I mean, if any team were to do it, it'd be this one, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, enough about that. Let's move on to your guys' pain. The breaking news over the weekend, really just over Sunday night. It broke late Sunday night that Coach Kyle was considering moving to Fayetteville, that there was offers in place, whatnot. And by Monday morning, the ship had pretty much sailed from what I saw. and he officially became a Hog. Signed a $7 million per year for 5 years, which is less than what he was getting at Kentucky, but there is 2 automatic rollover years that will extend him to 2031, assuming that he makes the tournament twice in that span. I would say that's probably a given.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a bonus for each win in the tourney, so if he makes it to the round of 32, which is harder than it looks for him.
It's tough.
He gets a bonus for each win he gets there in the tournament. He's being formally introduced tonight at about 6 p.m. And last thing I got here, John H. Tyson, billionaire owner of some mid-microwave chicken nuggets. Those are the most mid-chicken nuggets I've ever had in my life, is Tyson.
Yeah, the chicken nuggets are not good. The rest of the chicken is all right.
The rest of the chicken is all right, but the nuggets, which is what my mom always gets, is just... Anyways, he's the man pulling the strings behind the scenes as a mutual friend of both Calipari and a big donator of Arkansas basketball. So I'll let you guys take the floor here, as this is very close to home for you guys.
I mean, this was not surprising to me. Like, the last couple years for Kentucky, it just hasn't been the same. It's not we're not used to seeing Kentucky in this category. I mean, the last 4 years, in 2021, went 9-16, missed the tournament. 2022, first round loss to St. Peter's. 2023, second round loss to Kansas State, and this year, a first round loss to Oakland. Like, 2 of the last 3 years, they lose to a 14 seed or lower. Before that happened, they were undefeated against 12 and lower in the NCAA tournament. So I just feel like this is the best move for the University of Kentucky and for John Calipari. I think both sides, they need a fresh start. But just wish John Calipari the best of luck in Arkansas.
Ben, I completely agree. I don't think it was shocking to say. I just feel like it was kind of surprising how quickly it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because my friend called me, and it seemed like 2 hours after that it was already done.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just surprised how fast that happened and how off guard Kentucky seemed to be by it. So I feel like there wasn't good communication there, which is in his contract. But, that's a conversation for another day. But, I mean, we all knew he wasn't happy. We weren't quite happy with him because the results haven't been good since 2018. And that's a long time to be considered a blue blood and not have any production.
Yeah. So do you guys think this was inevitable to happen? Regardless of if it was Arkansas or I know Ohio State was actually a name he was looking at as well. Do you think this was going to happen regardless, or do you think Arkansas came to the table and was like, "Hey, come over here, buddy. You got $5 million in NIL money for you. You want to come over here?" Was it the right deal at the right time for him? If not, would he have stuck with the team? What do you guys think?
I mean, I was hoping he would come back to Lexington for another season and hope he would turn the program around and make a deep run in the tournament. But yeah, that's my take.
I was just hoping like it would be more like pretty of a split. It just seems ugly right now, honestly.
Yeah.
And then there's reports coming out from like The Athletic and stuff that he was considering the job in 2019 from UCLA. So he's been thinking about leaving for a long time. And then there was the Ohio State one. So
yeah.
I'm not surprised. I don't think we will regret it except for this year, like with the recruits losing those. But besides that, I think it was time for a fresh start for both sides.
Yeah, from an outsider perspective, I've honestly thought that for a couple years. I didn't know what the situation would be, but I felt like Kentucky needs a new face, and that's what obviously he said in his, I guess, exit interview or whatever, that he needed a fresh air, and so did Kentucky, and I think that's what kind of the majority of people believe.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how all that goes, but starting with Kentucky, because that's closer to home to you guys, where do you see the coaching search going? And yeah, that's all I got.
I mean, there's a couple of candidates that I had my eye on. Billy Donovan, obviously the head coach for the Bulls.
That's the one I like.
Yeah. Like, just going back to his collegiate career as a head coach, 502 and 226 overall. He led Florida to back-to-back national championships in 2006 and 2007. So he's got some experience and a lot of success with the SEC. So if Kentucky can reach out to him, I would not be mad about that. the favorite right now, Scott Drew, obviously from Baylor, national championship back in 2021, 446 overall record with 244 losses. So those are a couple of guys I got my eye on. So,
I mean, obviously Dan Hurley has been talked about and is the dream, but
has been talked about, but he hasn't. Nothing's been talked about in his camp.
That's fair. Yeah. But Scott Drew would probably be my second option, and it's crazy. I've seen people like Kentucky fans already trying to disparage his name because he's had like bad tournaments or whatever.
I was going to ask about that.
But like he turned around a desolate Baylor program that was on the death penalty basically, and they've been a top 8 offense at least the last 4 years, and then won a national championship. There's only 7 active coaches in all of college that have won a national championship.
Yep.
So there's only maybe 6 if you consider him the worst of those that you could do better than.
Yeah.
And one you just let go. So it's kind of tough to argue that he wouldn't be one of the best hires right now.
Yeah, for sure. I like the Scott Drew. I like Billy Donovan. I don't know. There could be just some random wild card that comes out. I feel like as the wild card of Arkansas taking Calipari happened, maybe that same thing happens in the Kentucky coaching search. But as far as Arkansas go, how quickly do you see them just flipping around this year and at the top of the SEC? You think it'll take a couple years? What do you see his job looking like there?
I mean, to be honest, if they have a good season this year and compete for an SEC championship or an NCAA championship, it wouldn't surprise me because we're used to seeing John Calipari in that era. So, I believe they might have a great season.
It'd be hard to disagree, honestly. It just depends on if his recruits are committed to following him, because right now I feel like it doesn't seem that way, because I feel like they would have already announced they were reopening their recruitment or whatever, and only Carter Knox has really done that so far. So, I mean, if they get good recruits, sure, but if it's not exactly as beautiful as he pictured it being, then it could be tough.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting part. He might actually have to use some coaching, stuff to make it there, not just rely on talent. But in his prime, that's not the case. In past years, I've felt
tough,
that way. But so any animosity between you guys, or you think, obviously I'm sure some Kentucky fans feel that way, for him moving to another SEC team in Arkansas?
I mean, I don't think it's a huge problem. Like, a lot of fans, they wanted John Calipari out because of how I mentioned before, the program's been the last 4 years. So I feel like it's the right move.
I think it's a pretty normal thing to do, like when you feel like you've been slighted, to go to a rival or somebody who's in the conference or division or whatever you want to call it.
Show them what they're missing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm ready for the games. Honestly, the first one at Rupp is going to be electric, and I can't wait.
I feel like the Arkansas-Kentucky games are always electric in
That's
general.
True, yeah.
They're always seem to, even though Arkansas was on a down year. And that's another thing. Like, they were on a down year last year, but this is a program that made the Elite Eight just a couple years ago. Eric Musselman had them looking really good. He just didn't hit the nail with the coaching job this season. Maybe he already had one foot out the door going to USC or something like that. But this is not a fix-it-up program. I don't think they're in as bad of a spot as Kentucky was when he came.
Fair.
You can correct me on that, but
100% correct.
Yeah, so it's definitely not as much of an uphill battle, I would say, at least building the reputation back up of Arkansas. But it'll be fun to see. Any more thoughts you guys have?
Well, just to your point about where they're coming from, Musselman just left from there, and when he came to Kentucky, Billy Gillespie was leaving, so they're in a much better spot than
yeah, for sure. So we're going to take a break from basketball here for a moment. We'll get back to it. We have some NBA previews to do, but we're going to talk about some NKU sports. We haven't done that for a couple weeks on the show. We're going to talk about baseball and softball because they're both having really good years. Starting with baseball, they have a 21-11 overall record with a 10-2 record in conference. They were undefeated until last weekend. We meant to bring them in last show, but because of time, it didn't make it. That they boast a 12-1 record at home. The NKU men's team does, and their only home loss came against Morehead State back in February, I believe, 7-5. They beat a Power 5 Missouri in a best-of-3 series, 2-1. They gave Power 5 Georgia a couple of close games on the road and went on an 11-game win streak before falling to Eastern Kentucky. And then we're back on another 4-game win streak until they fell against those two against PFW, where they scored the least amount of runs that they have scored since February. This is a high-powered offense that scores about 9.5 runs per game, which is insane. I mean, for college baseball, I guess it's a little less insane, but I mean, it's incredible some of the scores. I think, I guess this is against them, but one of the games they lost, it was like 28-10. Like,
that was one of the ones they lost.
Needs a couple touchdowns in there to get back. But I want to give a shout out to Liam McFadden Ackman, who is top 10 in the Horizon League in just about every positive batting stat.
Very nice.
And currently leads the league in batting average, 407, OPS, RBI with 50 RBIs, 12 home runs, and 35 walks. I had a lot to talk about here. What do you guys seen from this season?
I mean, I feel like this is arguably the best baseball season NKU's ever had. I mean, their first series win over Missouri, like in SEC, that's huge for a team coming out of a small conference like the Horizon League. Yeah, and they were undefeated in Horizon up until Purdue Fort Wayne. I think they're the most complete. They're the most complete team in the Horizon League. And looking at these stats right here, they're second in the Horizon League in batting average with a 312 batting average, and second in pitching with an ERA of 7.20. And this was interesting to me. I was looking at the stats this morning on the Horizon League network, or the Horizon League website.
Yep.
4 players are in the top 10 in hitting: Liam McFadden, Jake Pollock, Travian Moss, and Tyler Shanefelt. Yeah, so a lot of firepower on this Norse squad, and I believe this is an NCAA tournament team. Would not surprise me one bit.
I agree, and with bats as hot as that, they really could give any team a challenge if they catch them on an off night.
Yeah, their offense has been on fire, and that's some of the things I want to talk about. Like, their losses aren't even bad losses.
Yeah.
No.
They're losing to Power 5 schools. They lost to Georgia twice by 1 run. That's insane. And then you go and beat an SEC team like Mizzou, and then 1-11 in a row at one point, and then you have upcoming series against Wright State, who's barely above 500. So I like our chances in that. And then a game against Union after that. So I think the hot streak's just going to keep going.
Exactly. And that Wright State game will be on ESPN Plus. Me and Garrett, our director, will be working on that.
Very nice.
So
Awesome.
Be sure to check that out if you guys are interested. I mean, they're a fun team to watch. Sometimes they can be a little frustrating because I remember watching an Akron game where they went up to like a huge lead early, blew that lead, and then got the lead back.
Oh, wow.
So it was just like, I think it ended up being like 20-15. I was like, just don't let him score a touchdown. Just don't let him score a touchdown. But anyways, moving on to softball. They also they haven't played as many games as the men, so it's hard to get to that 20-win mark. But they are currently 15-12. They might have gone on and won against IUPUI. They were up 3-0. They're currently playing a doubleheader. They played a game this morning and beat IUPUI. And then last I checked, they were in the 5th inning, so they probably have beaten them. They were up 3-0. Not something crazy happened. But this team has looked pretty good as well. Their only losses in conference, they have a 7-3 record, are against Oakland, who's a really good team, and IUPUI yesterday. They had 2 major games canceled against Louisville and Kentucky. I was very interested to see how they played in those games.
Definitely.
I think the Kentucky one is just postponed, so maybe they'll find a date for that. But they played a lot of good mid-majors teams in non-conference, which has kind of helped them develop throughout the year. And their strength really seems to be in their pitching. They have a 3-headed monster in Madison Eads, Brooklyn Ballas, and Lauren Hicks, who all 3 find themselves in the top 10 in ERAs in the Horizon League. And I personally am of the opinion that pitching is what can win you games. They have multiple shutouts throughout the season. And, this is a tough team, and I think they just came off a year where they made the tournament. I think they can make it again.
Yeah, I believe so too. Just to recap this season, the thing that stands out to me is their home win over Michigan.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that.
Yeah, I
missed the elephant in the room there.
Yeah, like that was a huge win,
Absolutely.
huge home win versus a Big Ten school. So baseball and softball, this is a year where we're just beating Big Ten and SEC opponents. And Obviously, they've been great in Horizon League play. They swept Green Bay on the road, and they swept Purdue Fort Wayne at home. And overall in the Horizon League, they're number 3 in batting with a batting average of 269. And Ella Lemonor, she has a batting average of 417 with 35 hits and 12 RBIs. So overall, great squad. And I believe for the second year in a row, they're going to win the Horizon League and punch their ticket to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think their 15-12 record is a little deceiving. Like, you would think they're not as good as they are because they're a good team, but they've already played 10 games on neutral fields and only played 8 games at home.
Right.
And the 2 losses that they had were to teams in the conference that are always going to be familiar with you and always have the best chance of beating you. So it's tough. I mean, they have a tough schedule up ahead. Like, they have 16 games left, and 10 of those are on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be tough. But they have won 3 of the last 4, and then with only lost to IUPUI, like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they have a chance to finish the season strong. I mean, they're sitting at second still in the Horizon League standings. So I like their chances to win the tournament this year.
Yeah. Currently knotted at 4 in the top of the 8th, so they went to extra innings there.
All right.
Sounds like an NKU thing to do. Up 3-0. Let's find a way to make this game go longer, but good luck to them out there. They'll be done by the time you all see it. Yeah, so this has been a really good season for both, and like we all have our eyes fixated on basketball, but these are the 2 teams that have looked the best of any throughout this season, so it'll be interesting to see how those seasons end. The women's team, one thing I'll say is that they were 23-28, I think, at the end of the season last year. I know they had a below 500 record and made the tournament. So the fact they're above 500, if they can keep above 500, that means they're in a better place than they were last year. So best of luck to all of them, and we'll hopefully keep up with them as the season goes on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But moving on to the bulk of our show today, we have the NBA preview. We're not necessarily going in, obviously, previewing any matches because they haven't been set up really. But we will be going through and talking about the final week of the season, what different scenarios could play out and whatnot. So let's go ahead and get started with the East bracket, or East. Sorry, I'm used to the still in March mode here. But the Eastern Conference standings, where I have Boston on an island of their own, 62-17. Milwaukee is ... all the way down here. Milwaukee is 48-31. What's crazy is at a point they were only like 5 games behind, I feel like, not too long ago, and now they're 15 games behind.
It's almost like they hired a coach they shouldn't have. But anyways,
hey, we won't go there. Yeah, that's crazy. Adrian Griffin had them first in the East, and now they're the New York Knicks in 3rd place, sitting just a game behind with 47-32. Orlando is 4th in the conference at 46-33. They've really come on here as of late. Cleveland is in 5th place, 46-33. They've looked kind of rough over the past couple of games. Indiana, my Pacers, are in 6th place, 46-34. Philadelphia is in 7th place, 45-35. And Miami in 8th place, 44-35. I don't have records for Chicago and Atlanta, but they are in 9th and 10th. They don't really matter.
They're way down there. Yeah.
I'm not, for the record, I'm not a Trae Young. I'm not an Atlanta fan. I got this jersey for $50. I knew we were talking NBA today. My Dame jersey was missing, so this is the jersey I'm wearing today. So don't go around spreading the narrative that I am a Hawks fan. I am not. Anyways, what do you guys see from this Eastern Conference so far this year?
I mean, I predicted from the beginning that the Celtics were going to win the whole thing. I believe Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they're going to get their first ring. And
yeah.
So, like I mentioned, they've been the most complete team all year. I mean, they proved it 60-16, I believe, their overall record.
Their record right now is 62-17.
Oh, okay. So close enough. But yeah, I think that's a team that I'm keeping my eye on in this playoff.
Oh yeah, they're the top team for sure. They've looked like the top team all year long, pretty much.
Yeah, the Eastern side, it's Boston's to lose. They have the best. The best lineup. Certainly the best starting lineup I think of recent years, honestly.
Yeah,
Besides like the KD Warriors teams, I think this is the best starting lineup since then, honestly.
absolutely.
Milwaukee, I'm a little concerned for them now with Giannis going into the playoffs with an injury.
I'm very concerned
Especially
as a
with
Damian Lillard fan. Very concerned.
Especially with a calf strain. I got to ask you, though, like, since you're a Dame fan, how would you feel about an Indiana-Milwaukee first round?
I'm a Pacers fan before I'm a Milwaukee
fair enough.
fan. I want to see the Pacers win it all, but that's a scary matchup for Milwaukee because that's a series. I don't think they won the season series against the Pacers.
I don't think they did.
They at least tied, but I think it was a 3-1 in the favor of the Pacers. And I guess Doc's got them playing a little better defense, which wouldn't be in the Pacers' favor, but I don't know. Those teams don't seem to match up very well. And if you got an injured Giannis, like Giannis may come back, but he may not be 100%.
Right.
We don't know all the details about his injury. We do know it's not an Achilles tear, doctor from YouTube. It's gonna be interesting because they have just been free falling. Like we thought they were bad with. I don't even know why they thought they were bad with Adrian Griffin. I guess their defense just sucked.
It was only 27 games into the season.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's making dumb defensive decisions, but it's like they were still winning games, as far as I know.
I mean, they have like 3 good defenders on the team, so I think you really got to look at the players at some point.
Yeah, it helps having Drew Holiday and not Patrick Beverly. Yeah, they really saw Patrick Beverly and thought they could just, I'll patch up.
He's got that dog in him.
He sure does. Looking down the list, New York, honestly, I would have them as a contender if not for if not for that. But let's take a look at these scenarios first. With Milwaukee, they play Orlando tonight. Or last night for you guys. They play Oklahoma City and then Orlando again to close out the season. And then, so the best case scenario for them is they just went out and finished second. They'd likely play like a Indiana, Philadelphia, or Miami in that case. Worst case scenario, they fall to a 5th seed. They can go, if that is doomsday, doomsday. My prediction is they do fall to the 3rd seed and face Indiana in that first round. What do you guys think?
What game is it again? I'm sorry.
The Bucks.
The Bucks.
Like where do you see their season ending?
I wouldn't be surprised if they exit out of the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you guys mentioned before, that Giannis injury that might come into play. So
absolutely,
we'll see what happens in the future with that injury.
I mean, Dame's proven he can carry a team in the playoffs, but I mean, maybe over the Pacers. After that, I'm not so sure.
Right.
But what do you think, Alex?
Milwaukee, have them falling to the 4 seed because I think the Knicks and Orlando have just been so consistent this year, and again, Milwaukee dealing with the injury. I don't really trust Dame or Chris Middleton to carry the load, especially in those games, 2 against Orlando and 1 against OKC. Those are extremely tough matchups. Orlando's one of the best defensive teams in the league.
Exactly.
Second best, I think, in defensive rating.
That sounds right.
So that's going to be tough for them to win, especially without their superstar.
Yeah, Orlando has a unique opportunity that if they went out and, let's say, New York loses a game, which is definitely possible, they could end up in the 2nd seed. Like, imagine saying that before the year, Orlando Magic in the 2nd seed. But I think they'll end up a 5th seed, and then I'm looking at the Knicks. I'm looking at their worst case scenario. I think they'll end up a 3rd seed on that one. But the Knicks is our next one here. And they have Boston, Chicago, and Brooklyn. I could definitely see them losing that Boston game. Chicago and Brooklyn probably a little more likely that they win those, but they are missing Julius Randle, which will definitely be a big loss in the playoffs. I still see a world where this team is just so deep they can win a series or even 2, but that's definitely just a world out there somewhere. Best case scenario, they can jump up to 2nd if they win out and Milwaukee drops a game or 2. Worst case scenario, they fall to 4th or 5th place. And then, honestly, which would be a more favorable matchup, because let's say they get up to 2nd, they could be facing Philadelphia or Miami.
That's exactly what I was going to say, yeah.
I don't know. I would rather have Orlando or Cleveland there in the 4-5 game, or Indiana in the 6th game than Philadelphia or Miami. I predict they will actually jump to the 2nd seed, though, and face off against Miami.
I mean, I believe the Knicks, they can make a deep run in the playoffs, but like you mentioned, Julius Randle, with his absence, it's going to be tough. Especially getting through Boston, I believe that's going to be tough. But I believe if they get Julius Randle back, they can potentially make a run against Boston.
I have the Knicks winning out and then getting the 2 seed. I think Boston is kind of working with their schemes right now where they have such a big lead on the number 1 seed. So I think that's why they had such a bad game against Milwaukee as well. But I see them beating Boston and then having easy games against Brooklyn and Chicago. And my only concern with the Knicks is health as well, because obviously Julius Randle, but OG Anunoby, who they just acquired, has been hurt as well. So that may hurt their chances.
Yeah, it's great to have depth, but not as great when you just don't have it because of injury.
And imagine having to face, like you said, that Philadelphia team that is only in that 7th spot because Joel Embiid has been out most of the year.
Yeah, you know that's a top 3 seed if Joel has been here all year.
Yeah.
But moving down the list here, we got Orlando, who you mentioned earlier, has a really good chance of making their own destiny here if they can beat off Milwaukee, then Philadelphia, and then Milwaukee again. Since the All-Star break, they've been 12-7. Their best case scenario is they still have a chance to jump to 2nd. Their worst case scenario is they could fall as low as 8th if they lose out here, and then become a play-in team. All they have to do, though, is win 1 game, and I think they're pretty much safe of not falling down that far. My prediction, though, is I actually have them falling to the 5th seed. I kind of might have changed my mind after what you said, but I have them falling to the 5th seed facing Cleveland.
What was the name of the team? I'm sorry.
Orlando Magic.
Orlando Magic.
Orlando Magic.
I believe.
Orlando Magic.
First of all, what a great turnout the Orlando Magic have had this year. It would be great to see them make a championship run, but I'm going to go with the Cavs in this one.
Yep. For me, I have the Magic getting the 3 seed because of that great defense that they have. I feel like they can continue to jump. I like their chances in the first round because they're young and they're healthy, which is one of the main things in the playoffs.
Yes.
And second in defensive rating, if you're already doing that in the regular season, it's just going to be amplified and even better in the playoffs where everybody plays extreme serious defense. So I like their chances to come out at least with a first round victory.
Yeah, it's like me and Josh always say, defense wins championships. Especially when we're talking about Kentucky.
We don't have to bring that up.
We don't. We didn't have to, but I did. I actually, what's crazy about the Orlando team, just to kind of go back to them for a second, is that they're so young and they play defense. Typically, it's the offense that's there first with the young team, and then the defense comes later, but it's been the defense that showed up early for them. Looking down, we got Cleveland. They have a pretty easy schedule here. Memphis, Indiana, and Charlotte. I could see them winning all those games. Maybe Indiana will be a little bit tougher for them, but best case, they do have a sliver of a chance. They have just as much of a chance as Orlando. Actually, they're tied right now to jump to the 2nd place spot. Their worst case scenario is they could also fall to 8th if they lose out here. Again, just the worst case scenario. Right. My prediction is they go up to the 4th seed, like I alluded to earlier, to face off against Orlando. But they've looked pretty bad since the All-Star break.
I believe, just like you mentioned, I believe they'll probably be up at the 4 seed, but I can see them winning against the Grizzlies, Pacers, and Hornets for the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, I have Cleveland staying pat where they are at the 5 seed, and I do not like their chances in the first round, if I'm being honest with you, because I still think they're just working out those demons from last year where they lost to the Knicks that they shouldn't have, and if they don't, I feel like that's trouble for Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland. I think he may want out at that point.
Yeah, do you think the Knicks get him, or can they even do that?
They can definitely swing it, especially with all the assets that they've got this year. Like, you offer Anunoby and then a couple other pieces, maybe Hardenstein, who you're already planning to lose in free agency probably.
Right.
I think it could be done.
Well, moving down to the Indiana Pacers, they play Cleveland and Atlanta to finish. They don't have as many games to possibly jump up as much, but they can potentially jump up to the 3rd seed in some crazy catastrophic event I'm going to try and make happen.
Right.
Worst case scenario, they fall to 7th place. They have that benefit of not losing as many games. And my prediction is that they will finish 6th and play Milwaukee in the first round.
My prediction, I think they'll be a top 5 seed. I like Tyrese Halliburton. I think Indiana Pacers, I believe they're one of the most slept on teams in the NBA, and I feel like they're not getting enough credit.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But
Ben always is so nice to my teams.
I try to be, but
I'm not nearly as nice to his teams.
But like I mentioned before, I think they're a sleeper with Tyrese Halliburton, one of the most underrated players. I can see them making a decent run in the playoffs. Like, they're a really good offense.
Yeah, I think their defense is what will hold them back there. But the thing is, with their defense, it has gotten better. It's definitely better from the start of the year to the end of the year. But they still got to figure some things out.
Yep.
Yeah, the only really shifts I have on the Eastern Conference is at the top. So I have Indiana also staying put at 6, honestly. I just feel like they've regressed a little bit from the beginning of the year. But I still think they are good enough to avoid the play-in. But, I mean, a play-in with probably against Miami, if that were the case, would be a great game to watch.
It'd be a hell of a game.
But I think they avoid that. I think they're just too disciplined to lose that many back-to-back.
Yeah. So moving on, so you said most of your changes are everything else stays the same at the bottom. So looking down, Philadelphia, they could jump as high as 4th, kind of in a catastrophic situation like Indiana, but still possible. Their worst case is they fall to the 8th seed and just lose home court in the play-in. And then my prediction is they'll just stay pat in 7th. And then looking down at Miami, they play Dallas and then Toronto twice to finish the year. So, and if he won, but they're either going to finish 7th. They could jump up to the 6th or even 5th position, but I'd say they just stay pat where they're at. They're in 8th place. So, and that seems to be what we all believe. So moving down to the Western Conference, we have a Minnesota, Denver, Oklahoma City battle for the first spot. Denver and Minnesota are both tied at 55 and 24, and then Oklahoma City are 54 and 25. To be clear, this is going to change overnight. Minnesota and Denver play each other tonight, so these records are as of Wednesday, April 10th.
Today's 10th.
Yep. Wow, I guess they're right for once. Then Oklahoma City is a game behind, 54-25, and those three are kind of in a league of their own. Then you have Los Angeles Clippers and Dallas, who are both pretty much locked into that 4-5 matchup there, which will be interesting. Then Dallas and the New Orleans Pelicans, New Orleans Pelicans in 6th, 47 and 32. Sacramento's in 8th, 45 and 32. And then the Lakers are in 9th place, 45 and 35. Golden State in 10th place, 44 and 35. So, like, it's just so close-knit. Like, I'm just saying basically the same record, but just one fraction off throughout, just a little bit off. But looking at that 1st to 3rd matchup here first, Minnesota, they play Denver tonight, and then Atlanta and Phoenix to finish out their season. They likely got to win tonight for sure, and just probably win out if they want to get that 1st seed. That's their best case scenario. My prediction is they just kind of finish. The lowest they can finish is 3rd. I predict that they'll finish in that 2nd spot there.
I agree. I feel like they'll finish 2nd heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I would also say 2nd. I just believe in Denver too much, honestly.
Yeah.
It just seems like they figure it out every year. I don't understand it. I mean, it's obviously Nikola Jokic is the big part.
Yep.
But
and that deep team.
They just figure it out every year. And, that's the only big thing I really have changing is just that jump from 1. And I also feel like Denver will be motivated because they know if they get that 1 seed, they'll probably end up, I would assume, playing the Lakers because I think the Lakers will jump up to the 8 and then end up getting the 8th seed. So I think that's the matchup they want because they had a little bit of success last year.
Yeah, just a hair. But, the Lakers and the 8 seed's crazy. Moving down to Denver, you mentioned, they play Minnesota tonight. Then the Spurs and Grizzlies, if they blow those 2 games, then by golly, they don't deserve that. will. Oh, wait. Sorry. Yeah, that was right. Okay. Winning tonight, I'd say that's clinched. The lowest they can finish is also third. That's the case for all three of these teams here at the top. If they win out and finish first, that's my prediction. What do you guys think?
I'm right with you. I believe if they win out, they're going to get the number 1 seed in the West.
Yeah, Denver's too strong. They're definitely going to win number 1. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Thunder, basically the same situation. They play the Spurs, Milwaukee, and then Dallas. They will have to win out if they want to get that first seed. They're a game behind the other teams. I think they just stay there in third. They've been resting most of their players for weeks now, it seems like, as Logan knows very well, Logan Hatfield. So I think they stay in third. That's not bad. But all these teams could potentially face in the first round the New Orleans Pelicans, the Phoenix Suns, Sacramento Kings, the Lakers, or Golden State Warriors.
That's so tough.
Yeah, like
that is.
I'd just rather be a 4-5.
Yeah,
like
congratulations.
Yeah, like
you get to play the best 4 or 5 teams out of the last 4 or 5 years.
Exactly. But what do you guys think about the Thunder and what they'll do here?
I believe they can go higher, but with their final 3 games, the Spurs, Bucks, and the Mavericks, 2 out of 3 being in the playoffs, that's going to be tough. I believe they will stay at number 3.
All right.
Yeah, I have OKC staying at 3. I don't think they'll be too motivated, like we just talked about, to get the 1 or the 2 seed. Because
right.
who wants to play Phoenix, the Lakers, or possibly even the Warriors for their first round matchup?
Yeah.
Especially when you don't have that much experience in the playoffs.
Give me a Pelicans team.
Go against veteran. Yeah, exactly.
That has about as much experience as I do, as you do as the Thunder.
Yeah.
But so speaking of the Pelicans, they play Sacramento, Golden State, and the Lakers. They essentially controlled their destiny. If they win out, they keep their 6th seed. I mentioned the Clippers and Mavs. They both pretty much got that 4 or 5 seed locked up. That will be a great series, by the way.
It absolutely will.
Either team can really are probably the best chance at knocking Denver out early, honestly. So whoever gets out of that series, that'll be interesting.
And I know it's a long time ago, but Dallas just gave it to the Clippers in the bubble, and I feel like the Clippers are going to kind of want a little redemption for that.
For sure. They definitely, looking at those players on the team, they definitely keep that in the back of their mind. They hold grudges.
We're on the Pelicans, though.
Yeah, Pelicans.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Lost my train of thought.
All good. We got you distracted.
I mean, this is another great team that's turned it around from last season. I think they'll remain at the 6.
Yeah, I don't see too much movement there unless Phoenix gets hot. I mean, they have been on a little bit of a slump recently, which gives some cause to concern with the schedule they have left. But I think they'll stay there, especially if Zion and the rest of the team are healthy. That's the big reason that they're in 6th, is Zion is finally healthy and playing all the games. So that's a big thing. Now their first round matchup is not one you really want, but
no, absolutely not. But I don't think anybody wants their first round matchup anymore. Like there used to be like you get the Pistons at the 8 seed, let's go.
Yeah.
Like now you got to go against the Heat and the Lakers. Like what the hell?
Yeah.
But so we got New Orleans there. Phoenix is below them. They played the Clippers, Sacramento Kings, and Minnesota, all playoff teams again there at the end. This is probably the most bipolar team I've seen in a while. They could either rise to 6th or they could fall to 9th with their games remaining. What do you guys think?
Just looking at their schedule, like you mentioned, two out of the three teams, they're playoff teams. It'll be, I think they have a chance to get above 7th, but it's going to be tough. I think I'm just going to let them be at 7.
Yeah,
at 7th.
I think it's just easier probably just to say that all of these will stay put, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, I have the Lakers moving up from 9
That's
to 8,
true.
but
That's true. I forgot we got the Lakers down there, but it just seems like there's so much chaos to happen in this next week that it just feels like how can you even predict how it's going to go? Because like you look at this one, if Phoenix beats Sacramento, that's a whole game shift in that, and they're I believe just a game, or if vice versa, if the Sacramento beats them, they're only about a game behind. If they could leapfrog
Sacramento
there.
is one game behind.
Yeah, so they could tie them. I don't know if they have the tiebreaker or not in that situation. There's just so many directions.
I think Sacramento has the tiebreaker over most of those teams, like towards the play-in. So
yeah,
nobody wants to be right where Sacramento is at the end of the season because they're probably going to end up below them.
Yeah. Speaking of Sacramento, or you didn't say your thoughts on Phoenix. Go
ahead. Phoenix, I think they stay in the 7th spot because I don't see them falling. Because the team led by Kevin Durant, I think, is going to stay pretty consistent.
Right.
No matter if the rest of the team is not. And they have enough offense to just get them a couple wins here to keep them secured in that 7th spot. I don't see them moving any, really.
Well, moving down to Sacramento, they play New Orleans and then Phoenix and Portland to finish off their season. It's been a kind of a disappointing season for the Kings. Last year, obviously finishing 3rd. There was such an aura around this team last year that just has not been there this year. The beam is gone. You could point to that. And it just, I don't know, like Sabonis has had a crazy year. I feel like Fox has had a good year.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the role players have done it. It just hasn't been the same. I mean, they find themselves in 8th place. They could fall as low as the 9th seed, depending on how it works out. But I'd say they probably just stick around that 8th, or you have them going to the 9th seed. So
yeah, I do.
You know about that better. Yeah.
Just a quick thought. I just think they're just going to remain where they're at and be a part of the play-in.
Like we've already mentioned, I do have them falling to 9. Might be a little biased of a pick because I'm a Lakers fan, obviously.
You guys have been hot recently, so honestly, that's not a bad take at all.
And like the Lakers, well, I mean, I guess we could talk about them in a minute, but they're trending in the right direction, and Sacramento is not. So I think Sacramento will end up falling and playing Green Bay, Golden State team.
All right, Green Bay Warriors.
That is getting hot right now.
So going down the Lakers, we both have the Lakers staying put. You have the Lakers move up to 8th, which is honestly probably the correct take there. And then the Warriors, I think they just stay 10th as well. So just to finish off this, I feel like that stays the same. They've been a shell of themselves, but we'll talk about more of that next week when we're going through the preview. Let's go ahead and talk about our contenders for this playoffs. I have just 2, or actually I have 3 in the East and a couple honorable mentions, and then I got quite a few in the West, pretty much the entire West. But I'll go ahead and let one of you guys start for this one. Give me your first contender.
For the East, I'm going with the Celtics. Like I mentioned before, they've been the strongest team all year. They're second in the league in scoring, averaging 120.4 points per game. I like the Celtics this year.
Yeah, I don't even have a second team, honestly. It's
Not even the Bucks?
It's Boston's to lose. I don't trust Milwaukee's coaching.
Yep.
So I think that's shown true that I shouldn't. So I think it's Boston's to lose, at least in the East.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got down here the Celtics. They have 60 wins for the first time since 08-09. They kind of feel like the UConn of the NBA, honestly, where they've just kind of been at the top, and there's no visible weakness. Like the only weakness I could point to is that their bench is not that good. But when you have such a good starting lineup, do you really need that good of a bench? But I think that will maybe cause for some series that go longer than needed. But we'll have to wait and see. Jason Tatum has led the way of 27 points per game. It's just been almost a perfect season for them, I would say. Mm-hmm. I guess the only way it could be more perfect is if they went 74-8. That would beat the Warriors.
I think so.
Yeah, 74-8. Yeah, if they went 74-8. But as Ja Morant said, I think they're fine in the East. I did write down the Milwaukee Bucks as a contender. Honestly, the only way they're contenders is if everything goes right and Doc Rivers steps down as coach. So not really a contender, but a couple honorable mentions. I think New York would have been a contender if they didn't have the injuries befall them. I think Orlando is a team that within the next year or two will be a contender. And if they make a Trae Young Hawks run, it wouldn't shock me. But also Philadelphia, depending upon health, depending on what Joel Embiid we get, they could also make a run as well.
We're talking West?
Yeah, if you want to move on,
The
if you want
West?
to move on to
Okay.
the West, unless you got anybody else in the East you want to talk about. My
Yeah, the
Pacers are still on the board if you want to mention.
Yeah, Thunder. I was going to mention, the Thunder, they're in the West, but they got my eye. They've been a great offense all year, top 5 in offense and defense, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is having a great MVP season.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a young team, but I think they shocked a lot of people, and I can see them making a deep run.
I have Denver, obviously, and then Oklahoma City. I do actually have a second one because I feel like they can be competitive and even compete with Denver in these playoffs. But just because of the experience, I would take Denver over Oklahoma City. I know Minnesota's basically right there where they all are, but I feel like Minnesota's weakness is Rudy Gobert when they don't have anybody to contribute. They're basically playing 4-on-5 on offense, so they don't have to guard him, so they can double whether they need to double Edwards or Cat.
Yeah,
whatever they
time
need
and time
to do.
again.
Yeah, and Cat's coming off an injury anyways, so
Right.
I don't think they're gonna have the success that Denver or OKC will this Western Conference playoffs.
Yeah, the vibes definitely aren't there in Minnesota, and I feel like that team is just so resembling. I talked about you before the podcast that they feel like at the Jazz, where you have Rudy Gobert, you have a great guard in Anthony Edwards, explosive guard even, just like Donovan Mitchell. You have Mike Conley still on the team, doing Mike Conley things. And really the only difference you got there is Cat. Naz Reid, I guess, would be kind of different from what you would see at the Jazz. So it's not a 1-to-1, but it is just kind of gives me those vibes of the Jazz. Great regular season team. We get to the playoffs, and but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see how that all goes. But I have the Clippers in Dallas. I think Dallas is the strongest threat against the Nuggets. I'm gonna be honest with you. That might be a hot take. This is something that that a lot of people probably don't agree with, but I think Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Luka's proved he can do incredible things in the playoffs, and he did it against. I mean, he made the Golden State Warriors there for a little bit, have them on the ropes. Obviously, the Warriors ended up beating them pretty easily, but you got Kyrie Irving now. I'm referring to his run against them back in 2021, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Mavericks could most certainly be a team to watch. But we are going to go ahead and move on to the 2-minute warning, which is back. Ben, you prepared the questions for today, so I will let you take Josh's spot in asking them. Let's go.
All right. So, Alex, who will be the biggest threat in the NBA playoffs?
The biggest threat is Denver. They're just the most consistent. I think they're going to win it again.
Fair enough. Colton?
I guess I kind of just said it. I think the Mavericks. I mean, as in threat to, you mean threat to the champ or the
biggest threat to the NBA playoffs? Like who's going to
win all? Yeah. The Celtics.
The Celtics. All right. Which team will be a shocker in the playoffs, like Cinderella?
Mavericks.
Okay.
I have Orlando.
Not mad about that. All right. So where will Marquez Warwick commit to?
That's a tough one. I would maybe go with USC. Eric Musselman, Arkansas was in kind of his DMs there at the start of it, and he's already signed an NKU player in Brandon Tate, or is it Deshaun Tate?
Deshaun Tate, I think.
Brandon Tate, I'm thinking of a football player.
Yeah.
We signed Tate a while back. I think it's going to be the USC Trojans.
All right. Alex?
As much as I would love to see Quez try to replace Bronny and the James family,
He could do it.
I think it'll be Cincinnati and him versus Sam Vincent next season. Going to feed families.
Not mad about that.
It's going to be crazy.
Last but not least, who is your MVP for the NBA? Alex?
Luka.
All right. Colton?
For the sake of being different, I got Jokic.
Okay.
All right. Well, that is all we got for you guys. Thank you so much. We got a studio update on softball coming from God. NKU beats IUPUI 6-4 in 9 innings. Congratulations, softball. They are now 16-11, right?
12.
16-12 now. So shout out to the softball girls. It's going to be a tough season.
Yep.
But that is all we got for today. Thank you so much, Alex, for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Josh was out at the Masters this weekend. I'm sure he's having
for sure he's having a good time.
blast right now. So but glad to get you on. Hopefully we get you back on here another day or something.
I'd love to.
I'd love to have you back on. And thank you, Bill. Thank you, Garrett, our director, for working on the show. Bill, for everything you do. He's taking us to some new heights. So just wait till you guys see what we got working up. Be sure to listen to the Not So Small Talk show. They just, I believe, got a pretty big guest that they'll be having on here in the next couple of weeks. So you better watch out for that. The Raid, always a great show. I just actually made an appearance on that show. That's Alex's podcast, The Raid. I should have mentioned that in the open.
Check it out.
Be sure to check it out. Great podcast there. But thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.